It is now time, in honor of the Cincinnati Bengals being in the Super Bowl. I just said that. It is time for me to look back upon my all-time favorite Bengals team, and more important, my all-time favorite Bengal, a wide receiver you might remember, named Chad Johnson, aka Chad Ochocinco. Chad, you might remember, became a featured attraction of those Bengals teams of Marvin Lewis starting in the early 2000s. And Chad made 5 straight Pro Bowls, but was better known for his touchdown celebration skits. And they were Academy Award worthy. I loved them. Favorite was always the River Dance. Highly creative, beautifully performed. Chad was actually better at the skits than he was at playing football. And again, he made 5 straight Pro Bowls, and that team was loaded with talent. Marvin Lewis wasn't just he was a very good, bordering on great football coach who just needed a break. He needed a team that probably didn't have so many solo stars and bad actors. But that team was so loaded that it went 11-5 in 2005, you might remember, and had a home playoff game against arch rival Pittsburgh. Carson Palmer at quarterback, Chad and my other friend, TJ Hushmanzada at receiver. What a great possession receiver he was. He made a Pro Bowl also. Used to have TJ on First Take. He's done a lot of work here at FS1 also. And I'd learned a lot about Chad from TJ. But that team was so loaded. And you might remember the late, great Chris Henry. Second play of that home playoff game, Carson Palmer went deep, 66 yards to Chris Henry. What a talent he was. And on that play, the immortal Kimo von Oelhoffen crashed into Carson Palmer's planted leg, ruptured, I don't know, it seemed like every knee ligament, and off they carted Carson Palmer after 2 plays. And that was the end of those Bengals as we knew, and I was starting to love them. And they lost that game 31-17 with John Kitna standing in at quarterback. And yet, Chad continued to rise and shine. 2006, they went 8-8. 2007, they went 7-9, but it was all Chad all the time. In 2008, they really struggled. They went 4-11-1, but along that trail, I started to see on Twitter that Chad Johnson was taking shots at me. Those were the days I actually read my ats, my mentions, my timeline. I've stopped because it just pollutes your brain. If you let it and you're on air, Twitter will define you. It will reform you. It will make you its own. And I don't want that. I just want to be 1000% me. So at some point fairly soon after this, I just quit reading what was going on Twitter. I like to tweet. I don't like to read. I don't need that. But it was great that I did in 2008 because Chad and I started a running battle against each other, and I got a great kick out of it. It was mostly high-spirited, good-spirited, occasionally a little mean-spirited, I thought, on Chad's part, but he was clever and he was combative, and that is a recipe for electricity on Twitter or on live television, as you know. And as you remember, Chad's sort of catchphrase was, "Child, please." Do I have it right? "Child, please." And I would respond back, "Please, child," to him, just to irk him, to irritate him. And here we went, escalating into realms that finally caught the attention of some of the higher ups at ESPN, who kicked it around and commissioned our producer, Galen Gordon, at the time to, hey, maybe get these two together face to face on television. Never been done before that I know of in sports TV history. I had once upon a time, maybe 4 or 5 years earlier with Stephen A. Smith, we had guest hosted PTI for Michael and Tony, and I had many battles with Terrell Owens, and that was the first one, but it was in their segment 5 good minutes, so you can't really go too deep and too far. He was on remote. This was obviously intended to be face-to-face. So our producer connected with the PR staff in Cincinnati. They bounced off Chad. Chad said, bring it on, and we booked it. We were going to take First Take on the road for the first time ever. We were going to go to Cincinnati, and they said the only place we could do it, the only place Chad wanted to do it, was on a Tuesday, their off day, in Paul Brown Stadium, in the visitors' locker room. Okay, I'm game. Let's do it. This happened on September the 8th of 2009. It was the morning after Labor Day. I watched Miami and Florida State do battle in the Cincinnati Hotel on television the night before on Labor Day night. And here we went, showdown at high noon, or in this case, it was high 10, as in 10 a.m. But we had a pre-show meeting at probably 8:30-ish. I doubted Chad would show for it, but he did. Up he pulled. I happened to be standing, this is down the hall from that locker room. I happened to be standing out near the players' parking lot, awaiting him, and he rolled up, or I should say roared up, in a 2008 black Dodge Charger SRT-8. It'd become one of my favorite cars because a movie had been out, you might remember, in 2008 called Street Kings with Keanu Reeves. You want to talk about a badass car and a badass perpetrator and Keanu in that movie? Whew! I wanted me some of that, and Chad had it, and his stock went right through the roof for me when he pulled up in that black Charger. I think it's 450 horse. It was roaring. But he brought no entourage. I was intrigued by that. And he did come to our meeting, and he was extremely quiet and withdrawn, which I often find with very outgoing entertainer athletes, that sometimes they can be very introverted. I have some of that in me, but not to the degree Chad had that day. Might have been a little overwhelmed by what he was about to get himself into, but he participated in bits and pieces, and I assured him that, yeah, I'm gonna come at him, but you're gonna have all the time you need or want to respond. All the time. You take the ball, you run with it as far as you need to. We have time. And here we went into the visitors' locker room. In those days, our moderator was Jay Crawford. In those days, the show sort of revolved around me against the world because we did not have a Stephen A. yet. There's no permanent debate partner for me. I took on any and everybody. And on this day, it was perfect for me to go head to head only with Chad. Jay sat in the middle. I'm left, Chad's right. And I look up in the visitors' locker room, and it's astounding how many lights and how many cameras had been set up in there. It was jam-packed for our little show. And I must tell you, it felt big, and it felt real, and it felt important. And I had carefully plotted where I wanted to go, and I went. Jay first handed me the ball. Skip, what are your issues with Chad? And off I went. And I made it very clear to Chad that gifted receiver, gifted entertainer, but a me player in the ultimate Wii sport. And it won't work unless all you care about is starring as opposed to winning. If all you care about is you, then the we will suffer, especially when you are the featured attraction. You're supposed to be the leader because you're one of, if not the best player. And if you're all only about you, if you're only into you, if all of your celebrations are all about you and don't involve anybody else from your football team, your team will suffer and you will ultimately lose. And that's what started happening, obviously, to a loaded Bengals team. And my final point to Chad was, you can't do what you had just done on Monday Night Football, and that is wear a fake gold Hall of Fame jacket that you had made up. Because I said, Chad, you have now managed to offend and alienate every Hall of Famer, actual Hall of Famer, because they're all saying, how presumptuous of you to think that you'll ever make it in alongside our bus in Canton. Was Chad on the path? I guess you could say he was on the path, but he had a long way to go, because up to that point, he played one playoff game. They had lost it, and Chad had no reason to do any river dances in that game because he caught no touchdown passes. So, Chad, you can't go there. You stepped completely out of bounds with that one. I've said this before, I'm oversimplistic with this, but my view of the world is I divide it into you either have a good heart or a bad heart. A lot of bad hearts out there, a lot of good hearts out there. Chad's heart is good. It's maybe not always in the right place, but it's a good heart. He's a sweetheart of a guy, deep down. Misguided, gone over the edge into social media, trying to be what Twitter wanted him to be. Yes. That was his biggest problem. More interested in starring than winning. And I must say, he let me, quote unquote, take him to the woodshed that day, in part because it was a big deal. He was on national TV, going at it with Skip. He loved it as much as he hated it at that moment, because I hit every last nerve in his body. He knew that I was making a lot of good points. To his credit, he valiantly then fought back. But he was stung. He was shook. And I guess it was great TV. It felt like a moment on TV that could live forever on YouTube. And I guess it did. I subsequently battled Chad on television, I don't know, 8 or 10 other times, including some on Undisputed here. It's always been great. We became, I'm not going to say friends, but at least friendly. It was a day I look back on fondly because I went someplace with Chad Ochocinco that I'm not sure I've ever quite gone on TV with any other athlete. And Chad, I want you to know, I love you, man. I hope you enjoyed that video. You ready for more? Make sure you click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from the Skip Bayless Show. And don't forget to check out the full episode of the show wherever you get your podcasts by clicking the link in the description.